Hey folks, thanks for listening to another episode of Leupold's Hunt Talk Radio. We know the subtitle is Randy Newberg Unfiltered, and sometimes we go unfiltered, and I can't promise if we will today or not, but if we do, you've been forewarned. I'm in Missoula, Montana today with two great guys. We're at the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Rendezvous. Let's see, it's April, I can't remember. 7th. It's sometime in April. It's tax season for me. All I have is this dot out on the calendar that says April 15th. But, so anyhow, I've come over here and we're going to do a bunch of podcasting this weekend because this is the accumulation of more backcountry badass hunters than any place I go to in all my travels every year. If I want to talk to guys who really have the Western hunting gig figured out, I come to the BHA Rendezvous. So this is going to be a fun one. In the past, when we first started this podcast, I said, occasionally I'm going to have some of the best hunters you've never heard of. And today I've got two of them. So hang in here. But first of all, I want to thank Leupold for being the title sponsor of the podcast, of our TV show, of our website, of our you name it. I think Leupold probably even sponsors the gas I put in the car and my underwear. Oh, gosh, that's getting... Not really. They don't make gas or underwear. But anyhow, Leupold loves our audience. And any time and place they can connect with the self-guided public land audience, Leupold is there. So thanks to them. The other is onX Maps. I'm sure we're going to talk about enough things related to non-resident hunting in Wyoming today that the onX Maps topic's going to come up. If you are a person who is a map junkie like I am, use promo code RANDY. Go to onxmaps.com, and any of the hunt app items that you buy from them, using the promo code RANDY gets you 20% off. So onxmaps.com, don't leave home without it. GoHunt.com is what I use for all of my tag drawing, all my research, drawing odds, stuff like that. And if you wonder how it is that I'm going to be elk hunting in Wyoming this fall, and why I'm going to be hunting in Arizona this fall, and the list goes on and on. I do a lot of research on my Go Hunt system. They have a program called The Insider. It's a subscription service. And if you go there and use promo code RANDY, we're making this simple for everyone, same promo code for everything, you're going to get a $50 Sportsman's Warehouse gift card. So GoHunt.com, click on the Insider service, sign up, and get yourself a $50 Sportsman's Warehouse gift card. And then Orion Coolers, did that stuff thaw?
That stuff did not thaw. In fact, we had to open the lid because it was froze as hard as a rock.
So my two guests, Buzz and Jeff, came through Bozeman the other day, and they were bringing some meat over here for the Backcountry Hunters wild game cook-off, and I made the mistake of throwing it in an Orion cooler. And then I'm like, I don't think it's good. I know it's not going to thaw in that cooler. And so did they give you any grief when it showed up and it was still hard as a rock?
No, they said they could make it work.
Anyhow, Orion coolers, if you want something to thaw, don't put it in an Orion cooler. I made that mistake this week, and I walked out in my garage. I'm like, holy crap, this stuff has been in this cooler for 3 days, and it's like it's been in the freezer. This is not working out well. But... anyhow, Orion Coolers, we have a promo code with them also, Randy. And if you go to orioncoolers.com and use promo code Randy, you're going to get a tumbler that has the Hunt Talk logo etched on it. Really cool looking item, whether it's beer, coffee, whatever you drink. They'll give you a free one when you buy a cooler from them. So thanks to all those great groups who make this podcast possible. But now we're going to get into the real fun of this. I'm trying to think of how I introduce you guys. Buzz, you've been on Hunt Talk since Moby Dick was a minnow.
A while.
Jeff, you've been out there for a long time, and I see you on a lot of the other hunting forums. But they're on the podcast not necessarily because they're active on our Hunt Talk forum, but because... when there's hunting, fishing, and public access issues in Wyoming, whether they affect residents or non-residents, you can bet that Jeff and Buzz are probably going to be at the Capitol. And some legislature is going to get a phone call or emails, and you guys are going to rally the troops and the fertilizer is going to hit the ventilator, for lack of a better term. So, Buzz Heddick from Laramie, Wyoming, Jeff Muratori from Casper. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Put the headphones on and do this.
You bet, Randy. And first thing I'd like to say is just thanks for your platform to get this out. That really helps us a lot in our advocacy. So I want to thank you a lot for that.
Oh, yeah. Hunt Talk is, and for anyone who, you guys know this, and I take it for granted that everybody knows it, but hunttalk.com, our forum, that's an open platform for anyone who wants to come and raise awareness, share information. I mean, we got all the hunting and fishing stories and the arguments about which rifle caliber is the best. I mean, those go on infinitum. But I look at how many people are starting to use Hunt Talk to rally the troops, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And it's been good. So we're going to get into a bunch of stuff. This is going to be pretty Wyoming specific and by design. The other night when you guys were in Bozeman, we were at Kurt's house.
Yep.
I would have loved to have had the podcast running that night because
Oh, man.
Kurt, you walk into Kurt's house and you're like, this guy that serious of a hunter, or he buy these things? I mean, he's got more humongous animals, and he shot them all on public land. Wow. That guy's...
That's pretty impressive.
Someday we're going to get him on the podcast, but he's too humble and too bashful, and he's like, well, I don't have anything to add. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have anything to add, then what the hell am I doing on a podcast?
Yeah.
But Kurt isn't here, but we're going to talk a lot about Wyoming because I love hunting Wyoming. I tell people to go to Wyoming any chance they get. And you guys are instrumental in helping non-residents also. How is it that Wyoming, what's the percentage of tags they give to non-residents?
They give, I believe it's, for Jeff probably would know this better, but they give... I think it's 20% of all the deer, or 16% of elk.
16% of limited quota elk. And there is a 7250 cap on the total number of tags. So what's left over after the 16% of the limited quota elk tags are all general tags.
Okay, so it's kind of you back into that then. So there's a total of 7,250 bull tags given. And let's say that the 16% quota resulted in 2,000 limited entry tags.
Yeah.
So the difference of 5,250 is going as general non-resident
That's right,
tags.
yeah.
Okay.
And then across the board, 20% antelope and deer.
20%.
20%.
Yeah. And then...
And it's not an up to 20%. Like in Montana, we have that funky up to 10% rule.
None of that. It's 20%.
Separate draw just for the non-residents.
And then... bighorns are 25%.
Holy crap.
Which is the best anywhere. Wyoming treats its non-resident sheep hunters like no other state.
Yeah, in Montana, it's up to 10% per region.
Correct.
So if some non-resident applies for a U tag, that comes out of 10%. Well, I'm sure the ram hunters are like, quit applying for those U tags. You're eating up our non-resident quota.
Yeah.
25%.
Yeah, and 25% on mountain goat also.
Mountain goat, yep.
Moose and bison are 20%.
Okay.
So still, all four of those trophy species are big time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
So when us non-residents start sniveling about Wyoming... We might want to hit the reset button before we start doing that.
I would say so, yeah. And the other thing, too, is that once the initial draw happens, non-residents can apply for all of the available leftover tags. So in the case of like Pronghorn, they end up getting overall about over 50% of the total permits issued in Wyoming are non-resident tags.
Because of the 20% plus limited draw, and then how many non-residents buy the leftovers.
Correct. And I think one thing that Wyoming residents should do a better job of, and I try to do this, I have thanked a lot of antelope hunters and deer hunters in the field for, contributing to our resources by buying those leftover tags. I mean, that's really huge for our game and fish department, and I think residents could probably be a little more, hospitable towards non-residents, I guess you might say. And I really do try to thank them when I see them in the field.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
So when a non-resident buys that leftover, do they pay the non-resident fee?
They do.
Yes.
Oh, so the game and fish gets way more revenue.
Way more revenue.
Oh, well, cool. I'm happy to hear that. I mean, some people will say, Randy, you don't, your household budget, you have screwed up priorities because of how much you're willing to spend on traveling and hunting, and that's true. I have screwed up priorities. I don't want to die with a bunch of money. I want to die having spent as much money as my wife will let me on non-resident hunting.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like, and maybe it's because I'm in the CPA world, and I see all these clients die with gobs of money. And they all bitched when they get in their 70s and 80s about, boy, I wish I would have hunted as much as you do. Well, that was a choice.
Sure.
I'm not going to have as much money as you when I die, and thank God for that. But I'll have seen a lot of mountains and a lot of basins and hiked a lot of places. But
yeah, and that's a little easier sell for Jeff and I, since our wives both hunt. You know, my wife Pat hunts and Jeff's wife Kathy hunts, and they're both really, really good hunters.
Yeah,
too.
No, I see pictures of what your spouses shoot, and I'm impressed. It's in some of the places you guys go. I mean, this isn't road hunting. I mean,
no.
Don't get me wrong. If I see a big buck standing a half mile off a road, I'm going to go after him. I'm not going to say, hey, you're too close to a road. I'm not going to hike out there. But
absolutely.
No. So with what you guys do, you know, one of the complaints is always that, Wyoming won't let non-residents hunt the wilderness, designated wilderness areas. And I hear that all the time. When's someone going to sue Wyoming over that, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Wyoming is so generous to us. Why are we going to pick and nitpick on that?
Right, and there's still two ways that non-residents can get in there. They can either pay a guide, which I personally probably wouldn't do.
Right.
But a Wyoming resident can sign off to take 2 non-residents a year.
2 a year?
2 a year. So that's
for any species.
For any species, which is a pretty nice deal. And so we have that. The other thing on
I've never taken advantage of that rule, and I know all you Wyoming guys. What, you guys been holding back the goods on me? You don't want me in the wilderness area.
Actually, we do. I mean, we would really like, you know, people to use the wilderness, and it is. Jeff and I both agree that it's a terrible law. We don't like it, but it's the law, and there's really not much we can do. Although, just recently at a WPLI meeting we had
What is WPLI?
Wyoming Public Lands Initiative.
Okay.
And we had that meeting up in Lander, and one of the things we talked about was, and I think this is a valid argument, on putting any more of the WSAs into wilderness.
Wilderness study areas.
Yeah, yep. Wilderness study areas into wilderness. One of the hard sells is, as a non-resident hunter, why would you want to do that? Because you're just removing yourself from more land that you can potentially hunt. And we've internally discussed this a lot, and it's a big concern. We don't know how we're going to go about trying to correct that, but
I'll tell you that for me, when wilderness areas come up in Wyoming as a hunter, I'm like, no, I don't.
Right.
I don't want that. And that's selfish, I know.
Well, but bear in mind on these wilderness study areas, at some point in time, the public, everyone, including non-residents, are going to be able to comment on this.
Right.
Correct.
And so, you know, if you're a non-resident and you hunt in Wyoming, you need to get your comments in.
Yeah.
I mean, they all count. They all count.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that we see, Buzz and I know for sure, is participation, is getting people involved.
Yeah. And you guys have done a really good job in that in Wyoming, because you guys had a land trade going on. And Jeff, you were kind of the hellraiser of all this. Can I say that correctly?
Oh, yeah.
So
that's fine.
What was it? It was your state land board was going to trade a bunch of land that would block off access to a bunch of BLM and Forest Service? Is that how?
In that particular transaction, there would have been a loss of over 4,100 acres of already accessible public land.
Yeah.
I mean, so that was a takeaway.
Right.
That was
net
a big
loss.
Net loss. And so that just simply wasn't acceptable. In fact, 100 acres isn't acceptable.
Yeah.
But 4,100, that's a big deal.
So I was watching that from afar. And you guys, your Wyoming state lands, you can't camp on them, correct?
That's correct.
So
that's right.
I can't see where you can recreational or target shoot on them either.
Oh, you can.
You can?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
The things in statute that you cannot do on state lands are camping, open fires. You can't have a charcoal grill.
Okay.
They can designate parcels of land that are off limits just by a mere vote of the board. It doesn't have any public comment. So they routinely close places that have ag, maybe cultivated, or just landowner complaints. Right. So, yeah, we don't have as big a voice on state lands.
Yeah. And people who wonder about that, go back, I think it was podcast 52 or 53. Me and Marcus Hockett, my production director, we went into about a 15-minute discussion towards the end of the podcast about why state trust lands in the West are not like state lands that people think of back east or in the Midwest, because back there, their state lands are held by their DNR. Mm-hmm. Out here, our state land boards are completely different. They set their own set of rules. It's in Wyoming. Who's on your state land board?
It's Governor Meade.
Top five elected
top
officials.
five elected.
Yeah, that's how Montana is too.
Secretary of State, Treasurer, State Auditor, and the
State School Superintendent.
Yeah,
right.
That's exactly how we are in Montana. Other states, it's different. The governor just appoints 3 people, So, point of that being is they were going to swap some state land, and by doing that, it would have blocked off the access route that goes to some BLM.
Correct. Yeah.
So you guys fired them up. You guys, I was watching it on Facebook. It was showing up all over on the forums. How did you guys, I mean, and the reason I'm saying this is a lot of the questions we get is, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. Or how do I get engaged? And you guys, what you did there, and that's just one of the many things you guys have been involved in, but that was a classic example of how you don't need to be a big magazine or a big TV show.
No, you don't.
And to turn the tide.
You don't, Randy. And let me tell you, though, with all the support that we got, it was still a nail biter right to the very end.
Really?
And what happens is someone fills out an application, sends it to the land board, and says, I'd like to do this trade with you.
Right.
If the land board does that preliminary exception of that application, the process moves forward. It cannot be stopped.
Oh, really? So you got to be on it.
And you have no idea when these applications go in. You do not see it until it comes onto the website as a land transaction that's in the process.
Huh.
So, and in the past, we weren't even notified before the detailed analysis, which is one of the last steps in the transaction. But now, because of past issues that we had around Casper, they're putting the notification of the transaction and the application on the website quite a bit sooner so we can look it over.
Okay. So you say it was a nail biter, Jeff, but if you guys hadn't employed the power of Al Gore's internet,
that's right.
People are probably tired of me blaming or crediting Al Gore for the internet, but it makes for good humor.
It does.
But you say it was a nail biter. Do you think that the land board would have had the pressure applied if you hadn't had that tool, the Facebook, the forums, and everything else to get people engaged at that level? No.
I think what social media did was it was a tremendous help because it spread so quickly and so far. Posts were being shared, time and time again, going to different groups, different pages. And Backcountry really jumped on board and went after it. And
the online petition was one that I was shocked at. They put it up and I look at it and it's like they've got a goal of 500 signatures and I'm like, wow, I don't know if we'll get 500 signatures. And pretty quick it's like, wow, we blew by that in 8 hours. And pretty quick we're over 2,000, 3,000 signatures. I'm like, this is making an impact.
Yeah.
So it worked pretty well.
No, and that's the reason I bring that up is it's such a great lesson to the listeners who so many of our listeners say, I want to be engaged, I want to be informed, I want to do my part. That was just such a classic example of that issue ran up the flagpole so fast. And it was you guys behind it and BHA, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and some of your other Wyoming groups. And now, even us non-residents, we still have access to that 4,100 acres.
Oh, yeah, and it's great elk hunting, too.
This wasn't just, 4,000 acres of sagebrush. This
Right.
was 4,000 acres of top elk hunting in the state, really.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I guess, on that, too, that I'd like to say is one thing we heard consistently is Jeff and I made personal phone calls to the land board, and I believe we talked to everybody personally except for Governor Meade.
Okay.
And the one thing we heard consistently from those 4 people that we talked to is, thank you very much for calling. We had no idea. Nobody ever calls us on these things.
Really?
So you're talking about how can people get involved? Well, this is a perfect example of how they can get involved.
Yeah.
These people were thanking us. Ed Murray, the Secretary of State, was actually like, hey, if I have other issues, can I contact you before I make a decision on some of this stuff, or at least ask what your opinion is? And I'm like, absolutely. And so that they really do want to hear from sportsmen.
That is a good piece of advice, Buzz, because I think we all take the assumption that these people know they're in it, into the weeds of it as thick as we are. Well, they've got a million different topics they're dealing with. And someone might bend their ear on it who doesn't have the same interest we do. So they're like, well, I think this person is a good guy. So if we don't engage and we aren't informing them, shame on us.
Right.
That's part of why they don't know all the details.
It's a big part of the reason. Yeah, I agree. So that was one thing that really I had my eyes opened on. I didn't even think that I would probably get to talk to them all personally.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. They responded really fast.
Yeah.
And it was great. They were good conversations. They were positive conversations. And you're not always going to get your way on these things, but I think just developing those relationships over time is going to really pay big dividends.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Well, one thing you need to remember on these transactions, those 5 board members are looking at the money aspect of it.
Right, for the school system.
Right. Well, school trust is the main beneficiary.
Okay.
So
in Wyoming, you have other beneficiaries besides your school trust?
Roughly 10 or 12% of the money goes to other beneficiaries. So the school gets roughly 90%.
Okay.
But they're charged by the Constitution to use a set of priorities and maximize profits on that land. So they're in a pinch, in a sense.
Right.
But you do have to remember that the community need is one of those. Even though it's at the bottom of the list, we want to see it at the top of the list.
Yeah.
But community need is there. And when there was such a detriment to community need in this transaction, they just couldn't ignore it.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I wish more people would have seen how that unfolded. It almost needs to be like this little 5 or 10 minute YouTube story of how, watch out for some pissed off hunters would be the title.
Yeah.
I think I would put on it. But, it's just such a good example of how anyone in their state could be making the same kind of difference. And
you could be, and it's just all up to you to just go out there and do it,
Yeah.
And people need to just get engaged.
Yeah, and to that point, just complaining on Facebook doesn't solve the world's problems.
Nope.
It might make you feel better once you hit the enter button and it posts, but the problem is still there when you show up that night or the next morning when you turn the computer on. Guess what? The problem's still there. So I get that people are frustrated. I get that they want to complain and Facebook gives them, or whatever platform gives them, the medium to do that. But channel it in a way that's beneficial, because you guys now have taken that, or maybe even before that, you have your Wyoming Sportsman?
Yeah, the Wyoming Sportsman's Alliance. It's 8 of what we kind of consider the top sporting groups and sportsmen's groups in the state have all formed an alliance, and it's been working really well too. That was one thing that Governor Meade kind of challenged us on, was you guys need to have a unified voice as sportsmen. You can't be all over the map and 3 people on it this time and that time, and that just doesn't work. I mean, how it is. And so we have done that, and we've had a lot more success, I think, with the legislature and is working with Governor Meade. It's worked a lot better. Would you agree, Jeff?
Oh yeah, I think he respects the group because we have stuck together now. Was it 3-4 years?
3-4 years, yeah.
We try to get a presence in Cheyenne, and there is no doubt that when the 8 groups, because in a political issue, they all have to be in agreement, or there's no.
Okay.
The Sportsman Alliance won't move forward if one group says no. We're not in on that.
Yeah.
As far as a political issue goes.
Wow.
So that means you have a unified 8-member voice.
Huh.
And it makes a difference.
It does. I mean, in today's world, you can't get 8 people to agree on anything.
But
yeah, it's difficult sometimes. I mean, we definitely go the rounds internally, but I really think that's where these issues should be brought up, is internally.
Right.
And then once we all make a decision,
it carries a lot of weight.
Carries a lot of weight.
They know that all of you guys are on board.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I want to make a plug for Buzz on this one, because when we have meetings with the Sportsman's Alliance or phone calls face-to-face, when Buzz talks, everybody listens.
Yeah.
They know he's on top of it, and there's been several times the group has steered one direction and Buzz has said, "Wait a second."
The contrarian.
You guys aren't taking this into account, and it's like, oh yeah. So Buzz is the guy.
Well, how's your diplomacy on the phone, Buzz?
Oh, it's pretty good.
Is it? I mean, face to face, you're like the most easygoing guy I know. But on my Hunt Talk forum, I get one request a month to ban you.
I know, and I will admit that, and I've heard this from more than just you, Randy, by the way, that sometimes I get a little too direct, and and I got to tell you that a lot of times, the things that I do and say on there, I'm laughing so hard while I'm typing it that I'm about falling out of my chair. But I understand that not everybody appreciates my humor like I do.
No, and I tell people that, and I say, look, if you were anyone who contributes as much to the cause as Buzz does gets a lot of mulligans. So
I hope I don't run out.
Just calm down. Well, you've ran out at most of the other forums. You've ran out of mulligans. So I feel like I'm the Oakland Raiders. I take in the Lyle Alzado and the John Matuzak and all the old cast-offs who really have a lot of value, but no one else wants them. Yeah. No, I shouldn't say it that way. But
no, I tend to agree with you at times that I get a little out of hand.
But we've talked a lot about, and when I say we've talked a lot for the audience, we swap emails and talk and other stuff before this podcast. My opinion is that Wyoming does the best job when it comes to managing elk of any state in the West. And I say that because of the quality of the experience, the quality of the elk, but in terms of age class, and the abundance of opportunity and how hard they work at access.
No, you're hitting it right on the head.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hunt other states just like I do. I've hunted elk in every state in the West. Yep. And if you told me there's only one state you can apply in, Randy, every year as a non-resident, it would be Wyoming.
Wyoming is really good. I was just recently at a season-setting meeting in Laramie, and the way they do their management there is the general units right near my house in the Snowy Range. It's managed for 18 to 25 bulls post-harvest per 100 cows, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
They just had really good flight conditions this year, and it's 42 bulls per 100 cows in a general unit in Wyoming.
In a general unit where any resident can go and hunt elk there, you've got 42 bulls per 100 cows.
Post-harvest, 49 calves per 100 cows.
Which is
crazy. Yeah, really good. And it's kind of interesting how they manage the herd objective in that unit is 5,500 elk. Mm-hmm. It's been as high as 10. And the interesting thing is that even at 10,000, our landowners are also very good in Wyoming. They don't lose their damn minds when the elk are a little over objective. They just roll with it. And in fact, in this case, after talking to the landowners, that elk herd's now down to about 6,100 elk. Yeah. And the landowners are making the recommendation to the Game and Fish that, hey, you may want to back off. We don't want to crash below 5,500 elk. We want to try to manage it on a pretty even keel.
Wow.
And that's really, I think that's key, is you got to have the landowners on board. The sportsmen are obviously loving it because elk hunting's never been better. And then you have the Game and Fish that's responding to those two groups in a positive way, and also keeping the best interest of the wildlife in mind too.
Huh. That's cool. That explains a lot. And when you bring up the landowner, for me, one of the things I always worry about is in the West, the landowners, the private land often is some of the most critical habitat.
Oh, Definitely.
And we are, I'm always thankful, even in my home state of Montana or wherever it is, for some of the stewardship that happens on private land. Because there's some places that if it wasn't for private land, I don't know if there'd be an antlered animal left.
I agree.
I hate to say it that way, but that's
the reality.
In some instances, that's the case. Or even if you controlled the numbers of harvest, without that habitat being the quality that it is, we as public landowners benefit greatly from private land stewards.
No, we absolutely do. And, one hunter management area, which is our Access Yes program that we have.
Which I've used a lot.
Yep. There's one landowner there that is literally sitting on a gold mine that he could make a lot of money from. And he allows...
By leasing it
to an outfitter or even charging trespass fees. But he chooses not to do that. And my wife and I have shot, 4 really nice 6-point bulls on this place that, I'm humbled by landowners like that.
Yeah.
I can't believe how generous they are.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I'm going back to Wyoming this year. and this is, how do I say this? I'm going to let the cat out of the bag, and I'm going to get so much hate mail over this because I know some other people use the same strategy. But for my Wyoming applications, I look at where you residents are applying. I look at resident demand. And here's why. Because there are certain magazines out there that will, say, oh, this unit or that unit or whatever. And they drive the non-resident applications to places that you residents got to be laughing.
Oh, we are.
For sure. Definitely.
And I know... and same in Montana. Where I live, I look at where some of these application services do their applications. I'm like, I'd be so pissed off if someone applied me in that unit in Montana. But that's where all the non-residents go because they read about it. And so with you guys, and I can't believe I'm telling the world this trick. This is part of how I draw a lot more tags is I look at where your resident demand is high and non-resident demand is relatively low. Because if you guys are applying there, you guys aren't applying there just because you want to go for a ride.
No.
Or you want to go walk around the hills. I do this for elk, for deer, for antelope, even though I shouldn't say for deer because I'm sitting on maximum non-resident points just because it doesn't always fit my schedule. So I end up... But for elk this year, I'm going, and the non-resident demand for this hunt was pretty low. And I looked at how many resident hunters are in there. There's a lot of resident hunters in there. And the harvest rate is really high. I'm like, why in the hell are there not more non-residents applying for this hunt? Maybe I'll find out. In October, I might do a podcast that says non-residents don't apply. There's a reason why they tell you not to apply here. But you guys must see. I see it in Montana where I see some guy, he applied in a place. Well, that's where everyone said to go. And he draws the tag and he's like, oh gosh, this was a bust. This was a...
Yeah, I kind of call it a good friend of mine that I fished walleye with for many years. He called it fishing on memories when you found a spot that you just pounded them, and then you keep going back time and time. You never catch another fish there, but you're fishing on the memory of 5 years ago. And I think hunting's like that too, where some of these units get pumped so hard, they may have been good at the start, but by the time it hits the hunting magazines and everything else, I call it kind of hunting on memories of what it was,
Yeah.
Not that those units can't be solid, but a lot of them really decline and things change constantly. So
well, that's... I look at the bulls you guys shoot, and you guys, Jeff, you're way more secretive than Buzz. Buzz, he shows the background of where he's at and everything. Jeff, you just get this really tight clip of him and this big, massive set of antlers. So I don't want to spill the beans on anybody, but you guys take advantage of this as residents in some great opportunities from not just you guys, but your family members that you hunt with.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, there's lots of opportunity, and again, those general tag areas are actually very good, and you have so many options.
Buzz, we can't hear you. Buzz, we can't hear you. Well, okay, no, go ahead.
But that's what's kind of neat about it for us is we're able to apply for some of these better top units, but man, it's really not much of a downgrade sometimes to just go hunt the general tags. There's been a few times I'm like, maybe I'd just rather have a general tag and not even put in for one of these better tags. They're pretty good.
But as residents, you guys don't have a point system, but we as non-residents are on a point system.
Right. That's kind of how I met Jeff, which is kind of a funny story. We were kind of loggerheads over the whole point thing. Jeff was kind of advocating for it, and I was advocating against it, and that's how we kind of bumped into each other at the Capitol. Huh. And even though we met on, I don't know, maybe a little contentious terms.
Well, now I got to stop him right here. we both testified, and we both testified against each other. One for, one against. And out in the hall after the meeting, I saw Buzz there, and I went up to say hello and, hey, let's talk about this. And he was so mad.
His diplomacy had reached its upper limit. Internet level?
He was peaking the limits of blood pressure. And I said, what's the matter with you? And he said something to me and stomped off. Well, then, over a period of time, I think we each started seeing each other on hunting forums, and it became real apparent. Buzz and I think a lot alike. Mm-hmm. Maybe on one issue like preference points we don't, or one other minor issue we don't.
Right.
But other than that, we think a lot alike. And he sends me a message and he goes, you know what? I think we could do a lot better working together on this stuff because we think the same about everything, it seems like, except preference points.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting observation, Jeff. I'm glad you said it because I think in today's world, whether it's the people we vote for or the people we associate with, we think everything's supposed to be like this homogenous, lockstep, 100%. And if not, well, we just can't talk. You disagree with me that you should be able to wear a T-shirt to work on Tuesday and piss on you. I'm not talking to you anymore. That's a big part of what gets us in these kind of little camps of everybody.
Right.
Oh, well, that person, so I'm glad to hear that that's how it came together. I can envision this. I can definitely see when you said he told me to stick it in my ear and stomped off. But then I can also see him sending you the email that says, hey, let's figure out a way to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess I'm one of the guys where, I'm perfectly fine with get pissed, but get over it.
Right. Die mad.
Or die mad. I don't really care any of those, but, I think you should. I think it's fine to, kind of bury your soul out there a little bit, but then at the end of the day, shake hands and move on.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal.
You guys, in Montana, we started this program called block management. And I think we've got, I don't know, it depends on the year, anywhere from 5 million to 7 million acres enrolled. But Montana really has not come out of the 1980s, which I think is when the block management program started. It's clunky, it's cumbersome, it focuses a lot on just enrolling acreage, meeting acreage goals. I hunt your HMAs, hunter management areas, and I hunt your walk-in areas in Wyoming. And you guys provide access to some superb big game hunting through that program.
Absolutely.
How is that funded?
That is funded by, I believe, part of it comes from the conservation stamp that you have to buy each year.
Right.
And then also from donations. Okay. And BHA has actually done quite a few donations, the Wyoming chapter has, to that program. And then my wife and I also usually donate at least $100 a year a piece to it as well. Yeah, and it's well worth every penny.
Oh, it is so worth it. The Elk Foundation, I know we made a large contribution to one of the access easements that come through that because it provides, these are not like just overshot, rundown properties.
No.
And you let your landowners have flexibility to say, you know what, you got to park here. If you don't want to park there and hike, well, guess what? You can go on somewhere else.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. A lot of guys don't know Private Land Public Wildlife
Right, PLPW.
came about.
How did it come about?
The Game and Fish did a study which was mostly driven by landowner tags. And it was going to be a situation where the landowner was given X number of tags that they could transfer.
Right.
That's a no-no in Wyoming.
Yeah,
we do not like transferable tags. We do not like complementary tags. And they tried to convince the hunting public, let us do this. Let us do a pilot program just on 2 ranches. Well, at the public meeting, this was one of the first meetings, this has been probably 15, 20 years ago, that I actually was really being an advocate against. And they had to rent a room because the Game and Fish office couldn't hold all the people. And it was unbelievable. And so they dropped the idea of the transferable tags, and they said, okay, we're listening to you. We will try the other aspects of this program, like HMAs, hunter management areas, which they may not have called them that at the time, but it was the very start of that program. And basically, at the time, they thought it was going to fail, but it didn't.
Oh, man. Again, here I'm letting more stuff out of the bag, but when I go to the Wyoming Game and Fish website, they have the little green button that says PLPW. Mm-hmm. You click on that, and it's got all of the walk-in areas by county, and then you click on the HMA one, and it's got every HMA, hunter management area, listed, what antelope unit it is, what elk unit it is, what deer unit it is.
Right.
Well, any non-resident should be looking at that.
Absolutely.
Even if it's only $20, if you're a non-resident, click the box and make the voluntary contribution to access.
Absolutely.
And
even $1 or $2. I mean, it adds up when you're talking, thousands and thousands of sportsmen. The other interesting thing about that is, again, we need to thank non-resident hunters here. I don't know if it's still true today, but the last time I looked at it, non-residents contributed more to the Access Yes program through donations than resident hunters did. Really.
Wow.
And that was another kind of big deal about that. And the other thing, too, is, we were talking about Kurt not having anything to say. This would be a perfect time for him to be here, because he was telling me about the Montana program where he was calling some of these landowners on the first day it was available, and mysteriously they were all booked.
All full. Yeah.
All full. Well, in Wyoming, the way they do it is any kind of permission that's administered on a draw, if there's more demand for these hunter management areas, you apply for that, and then it's all administered through the Game and Fish, so it's fair.
Right.
There's no monkey business.
I'm bringing my brother and his 4 buddies. Montana has a lot of complaints about these ones that are reservation systems, and it's not online. And I don't want to hack on Montana, but for the amount of money Montana puts in that program, if we got the return per acres or per hunter day or whatever you want to measure, term you want to measure it in, that Wyoming gets on the dollars they spend, we would be hunting. We'd have access to some of the best elk hunting in Montana, because your HMAs and walk-ins have access to some of your best units.
They do. Yeah, and I believe it's about 3.8 acres per dollar is what they return on that. So it's pretty significant return on investment.
Very good. To combine that plus the thing about you don't need tons of points, the biggest antelope I've ever shot in Wyoming, I shot in 2014. It took less than 2 points, and there's a big walk-in hunting area in that unit. People are going to search the Boone and Crockett record book and see, let's see, what unit took in this county. So I got to be careful how much I give away here. But the point is, you guys have amazing areas that don't take tons of points.
Right.
And if there is one walk-in unit that I just about wreck my truck every time I drive past it, because the quality of the antelope bucks that I see driving down the highway, it's like, pull over, get out the binoculars and the spotter. Like, holy crap, why the season's open? Why is nobody over here hunting these things?
I know.
Is it because they think you can't hunt antelope by walking?
I guess.
Oh, that's a big part of it right there. Yeah.
Really? Everyone thinks
I don't think a lot of people get out and walk for antelope.
Really?
No. Huh. And so if there's not an access to a road where they can drive in and glass or use their spotting scope, it's going to get relatively little pressure.
Huh. Because that buck I shot, I climbed up this big knob. I sat there with a 80 millimeter spotting scope, and I saw this buck. I'm like, what? I wonder if he's as good as I think he is. So climb down off the knob, drive about a mile away, and when I get there, there's already a truck there glassing this buck, because now he's come off this area and he's getting closer to a road. I'm like, oh no, they're going to kill this thing. So I tell my camera guy, I said, well, just get out and film this because this buck's going down. And they've got a spotter and 2 guys on binoculars looking at this thing. And the buck's standing there. And pretty soon they jump in the truck and they drive off. And the buck takes off running. I'm like, phew, he's away from where anyone's going to see him. But before he disappeared, he stopped on the ridge, and I put my spotting scope on him. I'm like, oh my God, he's bigger than I thought he is. So yeah, I had to wait him out. I was using it. You guys have a lot of checkerboard there.
Oh, a lot of checkerboard.
Yeah. In a lot of states we do. Checkerboard being one section's public, one's private, one's public, one's private. And so this buck runs over the ridge onto private. And so I got to just sit there and wait. So I got my OnX maps chip, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. And crazy antelope being how they are in late September, another buck that doesn't, this guy, the one I end up shooting must not realize he's bigger than this other buck. But that other buck is meaner than him, runs him off. And they come running over onto the public. And I'm waiting, and finally, he gave me that opportunity, and I shot him. And yeah, I had to quarter him up and pack him out of there. But
it's an antelope. I mean, you're not shooting elephants out there or anything like that.
And I'm sure if those guys who drove away from that buck knew how big it was, they'd be in a fist fight over whoever suggested, let's go look somewhere else.
Yeah, that was a big mistake.
Yeah, that was. So it's just an example of if you're willing to walk a little bit, if you can navigate a little bit with a GPS.
Yep.
You don't need a pot full of points.
You don't.
No.
I'm constantly surprised how many people still have their max points for antelope in Wyoming. It's crazy. I'm like, why? You could have hunted a good unit 4 or 5 times in the amount of time that you've just piling up points. And I know people are busy and apply for a lot of states,
right.
But at the same time, if you really like to hunt pronghorn, you don't need 10 or 15 points in Wyoming to have a really good hunt. I know that Jeff hunts a unit that I'm pretty sure is for resident hunters is almost 100% draw odds.
Is this the one where your daughter shoots those big ones?
Yep.
Let's not tell them the unit number. You can tell me afterward. I see these pictures of these pronghorn, the women in your family shoot.
Oh, man.
What is going on there? I'm not dialed in good enough.
Well, yeah, my youngest daughter just absolutely loves to hunt antelope.
Yeah.
And so the main thing is I want to tag every year, Dad.
Yeah.
Okay, put in for this area. You'll get it every year. And she doesn't kill a Boone and Crockett buck every year, but she's managed to do it. I mean, that buck she killed 2 years ago was 17 inches long and 83 inch.
Yeah.
Just a beauty.
In a unit that you can draw the tag every
100%, yeah.
There you go, folks. Hey.
Well, and I'll tell you right now, that's where my biggest buck came from, too, 87 inches.
There you go. See? Yeah. So my point is, so everyone knows that I use this Go Hunt system, and it's got the best drawing odds out there. You can sort it by what your draw odds percentages are. There's so many things you can sort it by, and you can do what I do is lie to the system and say you're a resident, which I always say I'm a resident because I want to see what your odds are, and you need to be going to Wyoming pronghorn hunting if you have 0 points or 2 points or 4 points. Don't think you need. I think now max points is like 11 or 12.
Yeah, it is. I think it's 11 or 12.
So
but that area would fool you because it would show.
It would. It would. My system wouldn't work there. It would show that the residents don't even want to hunt here, so don't bother with it.
But
But Jeff, now you've got my mind thinking. I'm like, all right, I got to go find where these resident units are that no residents even want to hunt. If they're shooting 87-inch antelope in there, I got to go.
Yeah, that's over a long period of time. It's definitely, quality-wise, it's a great area, and we can always find good mature bucks, which are, really nice antelope. They may not Boone and Crockett, but they're great bucks.
Right. But that's the fun of antelope hunting.
Geez.
Antelope hunting, the thing I hate about TV is they make antelope hunting look like it's boring.
And it's not.
It is. My only complaint about antelope hunting is they're not the size of elk because I can eat one really fast.
Definitely.
And they're my favorite thing to eat.
Mine too.
I cannot believe BHA suckered me into sending over with you guys the last of my pronghorn steaks. After I put those in the cooler, I'm like, Randy, they caught you in a moment of weakness. You should put some skanky old rutted up mule deer buck in there and write antelope on it.
That's what you should have done.
Yeah.
But it's the best food I eat. It's the most fun, just relaxing, pleasurable, always exciting because you're seeing some. You're kind of some places you're solving the riddle of what are they going to do, and even if there's some private land, you know what? They run around and do so many crazy things. If you watch them for a whole day, they're not going to stay in that same little spot all day long.
Oh, no.
And it's just, oh well.
They're fun.
People will be like, shut up, Newberg. I like hunting antelope too. Don't tell them about Wyoming. You're just screwing up the draw odds. But Buzz, I saw that buck that Pat shot. That funky looking crazy thing.
Yep.
What was that, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, it was, I think, three or four. Yeah, about 4 years ago, I guess now.
Man, that is a cool looking
buck.
That
was a cool
I always
looking
say
buck.
shoot ugly and then big. That was big and ugly.
It was, and it's just one of the most unique pronghorn that, she'll probably ever get. And it was just really, it was pretty neat to see that buck. We saw it 2 or 3 days before the season and then just stayed right on it the whole time. And, there was actually another hunter that was pursuing that buck too that showed up a little bit later that did not get it. And I won't embarrass any of our legislators that may have been the guy out there hunting. Anyway, it was. But it was actually he's had pretty good humor about it since. But I will tell you that I told him just this last session, I said, every day that you're alive, you should thank me because my wife probably would have left you laying out on the prairie that day. And he kind of chuckled, and but it was a nice buck.
He has shot his share of big pronghorn.
He has too. Yeah.
But the point of all that is, you just said something that I use it for elk, and I really use it for pronghorn. When I find a buck or a bull I want to kill, I don't leave that thing. Even if it's before season or whatever, I'm not leaving. I'm going there every morning, every afternoon, every evening. I'm keeping an eye on that thing, and when my season opens, I'm there.
Yes.
And with pronghorn, it's amazing how they don't travel much at night. I don't think they travel at all, do they?
Not much. You put one to bed in the evening, it's going to be close by.
Unless maybe coyotes or something disturb it at night.
Yeah. Well, bucks have their own area. They generally mark their territory, and they can get run out of that territory, and they come back almost every time.
Yeah. The number of times that I've seen a buck and put him to bed the night before season opens, and they disappear in the sage because they bed down, right?
Yep.
Right at dark, and you're like, where'd they go? Well, I'm coming back before daylight, and I come back and I set up somewhere with the sun at my back, and just about every time I do this, I'm like, he's gone, the sun's up. Well, then all of a sudden, it's like Jack in the Box. They pop up out there.
Yep.
They must not get out of their bed until 15, 20, 30 minutes after shooting light, because there's no way they parachuted in there.
Correct.
There's no way they snuck into that basin without me seeing them come in there. They were bedded in that sage, and I just didn't see them until they stood up. And boom,
That's correct. And that big buck you were talking about that Pat killed, that's the way it was. We kind of watched until it was too late to see, until we couldn't, it was too dark. Just kind of idled on out of there, came back the next morning, and that buck and his 3 does were probably within 20 yards of where we'd seen him the night before.
Yeah.
They just stay right there.
I tell people that antelope hunting is not hard. I mean, if you just want to fill a tag, that's going to be the easy part.
Oh, for sure.
Milk it for all you can.
Yeah.
Whether it's like, okay, I'm only shooting the 13th buck I see. Whether he's big, small, whatever, or I want something that's ugly, or I want something with a funky horn, or make it fun, because that's the beauty of pronghorn hunting.
Oh, yeah.
And these guys who say you need to be able to shoot 500 yards.
No.
Most of the pronghorn I shoot are under 200 yards.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe I'm invisible.
No, you're right on. That's the way it is. I don't think it's a problem to get within 300 yards of just about any pronghorn buck.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they'll get out on those big flats, but there again, if you go after them, you're a fool. You just leave them, just like you said. Eventually, they're going to come off of there.
Yeah. Let the other guy go after
Right.
him.
Yeah, that's the best way. Yeah, no, that works great. Just, just watch them. And that's part of the neat hunt, I think, is that you get to watch these animals act like antelope out there and how they move around. And, I think that's all part of the experience. And really, I think you're kind of robbing yourself if you just go out there and, blast the first buck you see at 800 yards with your fancy rifle and things. I mean, it should be about the hunt. And that's what I like about it.
Oh, me too. I make some stupid mistakes pronghorn hunting because they're hard to judge.
Really hard.
As far as if you're, and I'm not into scores. If I look at it and I say, that one looks cool to me, he's mature, I'm going to shoot him. But we were down in Wyoming in 2012. Yeah. And I've got this big Nikon zoom camera, one of these super zooms. I think that one had like a 42 power lens on it. My new one has like an 80 power zoom on it. But these pronghorn are standing out there, and I'm snapping pictures, and the camera crew and my buddy Mark are like, that's a nice one. You ought to shoot it. I'm like, no, Mark, you shoot it. No, if you aren't excited, then I know it's not big enough. And so we're hemming and hawing back and forth. Later that day, I shoot a really nice buck. We go back to the hotel that night, and I throw those images in my computer, and I start zooming them up. I'm like, oh my God, what were we thinking? Why did we not shoot that buck this morning? And we actually had seen him again late that evening. And I told Mark, I said, he was in that basin when we left tonight, and we didn't shoot him then either. We are stupid. So once you could zoom and see it better. Well, he faked me out. He had this curl that went back.
Yeah.
And that curl always fakes me out.
Yep.
I said, this buck is probably 16 and a half inches, and he's got 6-inch prongs. Mark's like, well, what does that mean? I said, that means we should have shot him. We go out there the next morning at daylight, and he's within 50 yards of where we'd seen him the night before.
Yep.
And yeah, with me and Mark and 2 camera guys and clunking, it's like, there's no way this buck's staying in this basin. We drop down in this little gully, use just like a little ridge that's maybe 10 feet of relief. We get behind that, sneak up to the sage. Mark peeks over, and the buck's 150 yards away. He knows something's up, but he's looking into the sun. Boom, Mark shoots that buck. It was big.
Nice.
But it's just, that's so much fun.
Oh, it is.
It is fun.
And you guys live in the, if ever my wife leaves me, which I give her ample opportunity all the time, I might move to Wyoming.
It's a great state to, I was born in Missoula here and lived here until 2000, and it's a great state to hunt, but I think it's made some shifts that I don't really care for, and I got to tell you, I wake up a lot of days and I'm like, man, I'm glad I moved to Wyoming. I mean, it is a great state to hunt and live in.
Yeah, that's why I haven't moved out of Wyoming.
Right. How long have you been there, Jeff?
I've been there for 54 years.
Wow. No, part of it is I love pronghorn. And you guys have that, not just in spades, but spades and clubs and diamonds and hearts.
Yes.
And the quality of your public land elk hunting. I mean, yeah, there's other states that someone say, oh, well, it's not as good as Utah, or it's not as good as Nevada. Well, guess what? In those states, you get to hunt every 20 years.
Yeah.
That's the problem with them. I mean, it's like Arizona. I love elk hunting down there, but the reality is you're going to hunt once every 6-7 years in a best case scenario.
Right. Yeah.
Well, antelope hunting is great. To me, it's icing on the cake. I mean, with the deer, both mule and whitetail, and the elk hunting we have, I mean, you got to have plenty of time if you're going to hunt.
So I didn't want to... How do I say this, Jeff? I kind of promised I wasn't going to put you in a hot spot here about your mule deer. But you've shot a lot of really nice mule deer.
I've been fortunate.
If you want to say, Randy, turn it off. We're not going there. I get it. But why is Wyoming... I think everyone says, oh, you got to hunt Region G or Region H in Wyoming or don't waste your time. I look at a lot of the bucks that guys I know shoot in other parts of Wyoming, and those aren't slouch deer by any stretch.
No, I'm fortunate that I grew up in an area, central Wyoming, that has unbelievable mule deer genetics. And my dad's favorite animal was the mule deer. So that kind of got me going on mule deer, but I love to hunt whitetails too. But we've always had a lot of mule deer to hunt. We had a really bad winter back in the 70s, and it really put a hurting on the deer. Just about the time they were starting to struggle back, we got another bad storm in the 80s, and the numbers never really came back to those levels they were in the 80s. But something happened, and in the 90s, we started having some tremendous bucks, tremendous mule deer bucks.
Really?
And I'm not sure how it all fits into the fact that they were pounded on in 2 decades, and then they came back, and in the 90s, we started seeing lots and lots of bucks, and I'm talking general license hunting.
Not limited entry draw.
No, these are general license bucks, and there was a lot of mature bucks, and these big giant deer were showing up, and I mean, when I would find one, it would be obsession.
We had video of how Jeff's face changed right there when he started talking about obsession.
But and that premier mule deer hunting lasted through around 2004.
Okay.
And it was just unbelievable. The genetics were there. The bucks were big. You had to find them. It wasn't easy.
Right.
But then after that, CWD took a hold.
Chronic wasting disease.
And man, we just started seeing a drastic decline in the number of mule deer, and they are starting to struggle back.
Okay.
And I'm actually part of the Mule Deer Initiative group in Casper, and we're studying all this and doing lots of research. But all that being, as tough as the deer hunting has got, it's still not too bad.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're willing to walk 30 minutes or 40 minutes, opening morning, the light's gonna come and you're gonna be surrounded by some deer, and probably quite a few of them are gonna be legal bucks, So they're still good hunting if you're willing to go after it. It's just, I hate to talk about the good old days, but they really weren't that long ago.
Yeah. Your biologists or whoever it is in your agency, I went to a presentation where they showed the impacts that CWD had on your buck population.
Yeah.
It was dramatic.
Yeah.
How that affected your mule deer.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to hit elk? I mean, it's obviously endemic to the area. So
right, and the elk have it already.
They do.
And you and I have both seen the herds of elk in that area. We've hunted it, and it just, from the hunter harvested animals that they're testing, the percentage of the CWD, it has stayed pretty much at 5 to 6%. It hasn't gone down. It hasn't gone up. It stayed pretty static. So apparently it's not going to affect them unless something changes.
Right. Because it's been in the elk herd there for
10 years or so. Yeah, they've been testing positive there.
Yeah.
And when I've been there, I've hunted it 4 times in that general area, or I've hunted it 3 and been on another hunt a 4th time. There seem to be significantly over objective.
Oh, way over. Yeah. That could be about the understatement of the podcast. They are way over objective in those units.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that, because there is the worry about CWD hitting the elk herds that migrate in and out of Yellowstone.
Right.
And a lot of people are using the effect on mule deer to extrapolate what the effect is going to be on elk. And maybe I'm not smart enough to answer that question, but that area you're referring to in those areas of southern and central and other places in Wyoming, it certainly has not expressed itself in a humongous way in the elk herds the way it has.
Not
in
at
the mule
all.
deer.
It hasn't. And this particular herd, we really love the late cow hunts.
Okay.
I like to shoot bulls, but I love the late cow hunts, and we have a great time doing that. And if you ever late cow hunt in that area, you'll see 1,000 to 1,500 elk in one group sometimes.
Yeah.
So obviously these elk are
they're congregating.
Very much so. They're eating off all the same ground. The local ranchers in the area, they have salt licks.
Yeah.
So with all this interaction between the elk, being on the same ground in the same areas, there still hasn't been that increase in the CWD in that herd. So that's hopeful.
Yeah.
While the Game and Fish still realizes that they're over objective, you still hate to see CWD take the herd down. I mean,
for sure.
So, I guess for now, with so many unanswered questions about CWD, we can be grateful that it hasn't taken hold of that herd.
Yeah.
Or any herd that I know of in Wyoming.
You look at the CWD map that Wyoming puts out of, it was identified in these units. They have it by a year, and you can see where it's moving. And then if you overlay an elk population map on top of that, just about every one of those areas are over objective.
Yeah. I know, right?
And one of them is the area you said, Buzz, that has 46 bulls.
42 per 100 cows, yeah. Or 42 bulls per 100 cows, yeah. Yep.
Post-harvest.
Post-harvest, yep.
And that area is endemic CWD area.
Yep, it sure is. Yep. The other thing, too, we're doing right now, too, that I think is going to probably solve some of the issue with mule deer is the migration initiative.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, they're doing. In fact, I think there's going to be a talk about that at the BHA convention this weekend.
Okay.
So I think that's really great. And I was lucky enough to be invited by Lee Knox, our local biologist, and then Jeff went up in Casper. We just did a capture of about 60 mule deer does in each one of those 2 herds and fit them with radio collars and GPS collars, and they're finding a lot of interesting data already. Yeah. And this has just been a few months.
It's amazing stuff. Arthur Middleton's been doing that same stuff with the elk herds that come out of the park and migrate over towards Cody. And when you put these GPS collars on those animals, they follow some very tight corridors.
They do.
Going into their migration and coming out. And what it's helped us at the Elk Foundation do is identify, this piece of ground is extremely critical. If we're going to prioritize conservation projects in that area, here are some absolute critical spots we need to be putting money in the ground.
Absolutely.
And so we just re-upped to help fund Middleton's studies for 2 more years. When I say we, I shouldn't say we. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has. And where Middleton came, his idea for that came from the mule deer migration initiative that you guys are working on.
Yeah.
That led him to this elk migration initiative.
And I was talking to Lee the other day, and they're kind of interested in maybe doing some work with pronghorn as well in Wyoming if they can find some funding to do it, which I think would be neat too, because all these different, it's pretty amazing what these animals go through. And I guess as a hunter, that's one thing I try to keep in mind is, there's nothing wrong with pulling the trigger on animals and killing them and eating them and all that stuff, but you just really need to keep in mind what's going on every time you do. I mean, these animals are pretty amazing things. They really are. Yeah.
I look at the harshness. Having hunted in Wyoming when the winter comes, people have seen episodes with me stuck, my camp stranded in the snow drifts and the chaining up all fours. And I look at a pronghorn making a living out there for the next 5 months of that kind of weather.
It's amazing.
Unbelievable. And what's he going to do? He's going to bust through snow and chew on what little bit of sage tops are blown off above the snow.
I just read an article the other day about the antelope or pronghorn in Jackson. Yeah. They thought they were stuck because we got that big snow.
I read that.
Yeah, and then here they still make their migration, plowing through who knows how many feet of snow. Yeah, they made the migration still.
They were worried that herd was going to die.
Yeah, last I heard, it stayed there.
No, they moved.
Really?
I heard they moved. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So
how cool is that?
I know.
And I guess that gets me to the point of I'll read out on Facebook or someone will post something about, I'm a hunter and look how much we fund through Pittman Robertson and license sales. We do. That's a fact. But the day of thinking that hunting and conservation is going to sustain just on license sales and Pittman Robertson excise tax, that's not the case anymore.
No.
It's volunteerism. It's putting more money out of your pocket. That's where I kind of, and I don't want this to it's going to sound terrible the way I say it, but there's a different level or a different view I have of someone who says I'm a conservationist because I bought my license this year. Versus the guy who's got his shoulder to the wheel, like most of these folks here at BHA. Back in their communities, they're volunteers. What they're putting in terms of their time and their money to conservation, that's a serious statement about I'm committed to conservation.
Oh, yeah. And, we took a hit this year in the legislature on funding. Yeah. And, Buzz... spearheaded BHA trying to straighten that out, and we didn't get it done. But that was a legislative screw up, and they basically took away the general fund money they gave towards the game and fish budget.
Right. In the past, they'd been giving some to game and fish for, health insurance?
Non-game species, that type of thing. Grizzly bear.
And wolf management, and I think sage grouse, for sage grouse too.
So they put a bill in that said, to balance our general fund, we're pulling that away from game and fish.
Absolutely.
And you guys got to make it up, and here's how we'll make it up for you through a fee increase.
Yeah, we've been asking for a fee increase for probably the last 3 or 4 sessions. And in my opinion, we ran some really good bills to get that done, and they're like, no, I'm getting pushback. Well, funny when they can save $4.5 million a year in general fund money. Oh, now we'll give you your, and they act like they're doing us a favor. If those are the kind of favors you're going to, present me with, gee, thanks.
So we have a dilemma now. We're going to make up that general fund money through the first license fee increase in 8 or 10 years?
Oh yeah, right. Yep.
Resident. Non-resident, both,
but mostly
non-resident. Yeah. So we're going to make up that general fund money through a license fee increase that took 10 years. So what's going to happen next year or the year after when the Pittman Robertson money is down and we need extra funding for the game and fish?
Right.
We're not going to. We'll probably be another 10 years before we get another fee increase.
So our first license fee increase in 8 or 10 years went towards making up what they took away from us.
Wow.
So we could see some tough times coming up.
That's unfortunate because you guys in your agency do such a great job. But you can't do it without funding. You can't have world-class animal herds funded with a bake sale.
No. That's right. That's exactly right.
Any legislator who thinks that, we should take them out in the street and work them over.
We should. That's a true story.
It just annoys me to no end. Oh, well, everybody else is cutting back. You know what? These fishing game budgets have been cutting back
forever.
Yeah. Doing more with less pretty soon, what do you say it, Buzz? Pretty soon you have to do a lot less with less.
Yeah, you do less with less. I hear it, both in my job and at the game and fish level, and it's just, and from the legislature, it's ridiculous. You can't, I guess you can't make chicken shit out of chicken salad, or chicken salad out of chicken shit. You just can't do it, and that's what they expect us to do. And it's ridiculous. I get tired of it. And the other thing, too, to keep in mind is why would the state legislature not want to invest in wildlife?
Yeah,
it seems like, in Laramie or in Albany County alone, the Wyoming Wildlife Federation did an economic impact study there. Just in hunting and fishing alone, hunting and angling, $25.3 million a year. Yeah. And they're pulling $4.5 million of funding from why would you do that? It's an investment for everybody. Right. It's not just for hunters, it's for everybody.
Right. And the return we get on our investment in conservation and wildlife, if you did that multiplier like they always like to do of, motels and gas stations and, just on and on and on. If you did that multiplier by every state or even, like you said, county.
By county.
I would like to see a legislator look at that analysis and say, I think we should cut even more.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Right. Or to say, we shouldn't raise fees. I mean, we struggle with it in Montana. We did I can't even remember. It was such a small dollar amount in the resident fee increase. It's a rounding error in most people's monthly coffee budget. Mm-hmm. I know I spill more coffee on the floor of my truck than what that fee increase was to me. And I look at what I get for that. I get to fish 365 days a year. I think the only month I can't be hunting something is July. And who knows, in Montana, maybe we'll have an elk shoulder season in July pretty soon.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, one of our problems is our legislators are the ones who are, they're the ones who decide whether or not we get that increase. It should be really done at the commission level.
It should be. And, I studied this quite a while ago, and the time since I researched it, probably in 2006 or 7, is going to cause me to misstate some of this as far as dates. But all of the western states that I could find at one time had just what you said, Jeff. The director and the commission were autonomous. They set the management plans, they set the fee structure, they did all that. And then, as politics started rearing its nasty voice or rear its ugly head, pretty soon directors became appointees of a governor. Well, then the legislature said, the governor's got someone over at Game and Fish. We want to be able to either nominate or approve the commissioners. And no fee increase. Anything that's you guys can set seasons, but anything that's a fee increase has to come through us. And since that time, most of that started changing in the late 70s and early 80s. Since that time, the politicization, whatever the term would be, the way that politics has now interjected into game management. There's a direct correlation.
Mm-hmm. There is.
To when that started.
That's right.
It's unfortunate.
Well, and on the flip side, every legislative season we get crazy game and fish bills that come up. They should not be before our legislators. I'll give them all the credit. They got elected. They're due that respect. But when it comes to game and fish matters, it's really should not be up to them. It could go from license allocation to 100 different things involved with the game and fish, and the legislature is voting on it and passing laws about it.
Yeah,
it's just crazy.
Yeah, next we're going to hire the janitors to run the state pension fund or something.
Exactly.
To me, that's the equivalent. Most of the legislators I talk to across the West don't know shit from soup when it comes to fishing game issues, wildlife issues.
That's right.
At least as far as if you want to manage this as a resource, with the resource being priority. They want to manage it according to what's going to get them the most pats on the back down at the coffee shop or down at the bar. Mm-hmm. That usually it doesn't spell good news for elk or deer, antelope, or the hunters of tomorrow or public access or whatever. Back to one of the first points you brought up, though, one thing I am finding is if you get those guys in the coffee shop with enough of you, all of a sudden they're like, well, I didn't know that. Well,
That's
you know
right.
why you don't know that? Because you got your head somewhere there isn't fresh. Let us pull it out for you.
Yeah.
And that's why Buzz and I have found out it's extremely important that we stay at the ground level on everything. And right now we just finished a legislative session. It could have been disastrous. It wasn't great, but it wasn't disastrous. Now we're going into the interim process where the legislative committees are starting to talk about game and fish issues that might come up for the next session.
Yeah.
So we're finding that we need to be there at the beginning when those things start. When they start talking about license allocation or confidentiality or whatever, we need to be there so that we can stand up and say, no, you guys got it wrong here.
Yeah.
And that's tough because they do these interim committee meetings all across the state. And you
During the week,
you got to pack up, you got to go there, generally spend the night. I mean, it's tough. And it would be great to have about 10 or 20 other guys that would jump in and say, okay, I'll do this one. You do that one. But yeah, it's you got to stay up on it or something's going to backdoor you.
And the reason I keep letting that become part of the conversation or even dragging it into the conversation is I want the audience to learn from what you guys are doing and what you've done. And it is so remarkable what you guys in your cadre of fellow advocates have done. It is remarkable. And whatever state a listener might be in, it would only take them to put together 8, 10, a dozen other advocates, and they would make a huge difference.
You can, and they need to do that. I think everybody needs to do that. And I know we're going to have some challenges here coming up with the in the interim, and I don't know if this would be a good time to bring up the one topic that
before we get to that topic, Buzz,
we're kind of chomping here a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to talk about it, but it sounds like Buzz does. So we'll get to it. But before we get to that, Jeff, you brought up a word that caused my eyebrows to go up: whitetails. I was in Wyoming in November with Matt Seidel from Onyx Maps, and when people see this episode this fall, they're going to say, what? You got that as a second choice tag as a non-resident, and you got to go there and hunt whitetails with a rifle in the middle of the rut? Yeah. So your demand for whitetail tags is going to go up after that episode airs. They may not be leftovers any longer for non-residents, but these were general units for residents. You guys could just go and do it.
Yeah, we usually can't go do the late hunt unless it's in the northeast corner.
Right. We were on the north border up.
Really?
Yeah, we weren't too far from Montana.
Oh, okay.
So,
but you were in the northeast corner?
I'm not going to get too specific here because I want to go again this year.
Yeah. Okay.
But let's just say we were somewhere between South Dakota and Wyoming, within 50 miles of the Montana border.
Okay. That's pretty narrow.
But you guys have amazing whitetail hunting.
We do.
And nobody thinks of Wyoming for whitetails.
No, they don't.
And you were talking about it earlier, like, oh yeah, I got distracted by whitetails for a while.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, 2 years ago, I was getting ready for the November 1st opener for elk, and I was out scouting elk, and what I love to do, and I'm looking up this creek bottom, and I see this deer coming down the creek bottom, and I said, that's a whitetail buck, and I put the scope on it, and I'm going, that is a big whitetail buck. And I'm thinking, okay, so is the season open for deer? And I grabbed my orders. I was confident that it was, and I had a tag, and I had my coyote gun in the back seat, and I changed from elk scouting to whitetail hunting. Oh yeah, we have some great whitetails. Yeah, it's
one day, Buzz, I turn on Hunt Talk and I look, and there's a post from Buzz. He was on his way to a meeting somewhere, And you shot a really nice whitetail.
Yeah. I was heading up to Montana, actually, to hunt with my dad and brother up here, Okay. And I was looking at the map the night before, and I'm like, that's open for whitetail still. And there's couple pieces of state ground right here that look like it's in a creek bottom. Probably going to be some whitetail there. So I planned my trip so I'd be there about at daylight. And so I pull in there and I look, and there's a couple whitetail does out there. And I'm like, well, I haven't shot a whitetail doe for a long time. Maybe I'll just shoot one of those. So I'm kind of getting my stuff together, and I throw my glasses up, and I'm like, I don't see the two does anymore, but man, that's a pretty nice buck right there. So I hurry up, and I'm still in my flip-flop shoes, and and I actually bought my nephew Aiden a hunting vest, an orange vest, and I was like, that's all I got. So I grabbed it real quick and threw, and I look like an idiot because I got like this tiny little orange vest on, but it's what it is. So I go out there, and the buck's just standing there, and I kind of walked out there a ways and got off the road probably a couple hundred yards, and he's still just kind of messing around by those does and shot him, and went up there, and it's like a probably 135-inch 6x6, and I'm like, I was like, man, that worked out pretty well. I might have to try that again.
Well, I have a whitetail problem. I've shot 25 bucks in Montana since I moved here a long time ago. 4 of them are mule deer, and the rest are whitetails. I am. How do I say this without sounding like I'm a drug addict? But the needle is deep in my arm when it comes to injecting me with Wyoming whitetails.
Oh, boy.
Because last year was the first time I ever said, you know what? Hell with it. I'm going to go do that. When I'm out antelope hunting, I'm seeing whitetails in a lot of places. I know I can find one. Well, in this area, there's not much public land. But you don't need a lot of public land for whitetails, especially in November. So we're going to these little state pieces. They're like a half section, 300 acres, 320 acres, and these creeks cross through it. Mm-hmm. So we park and we walk down, sit on the creek bank, and half hour, here comes a buck. Here comes another one. Here comes another one. Pretty soon, Matt, the guy from OnX, he shot a really nice buck there.
That was a nice buck.
And I could have shot bucks, but I just, when you're hunting smaller sections, you really want to be careful. Because,
sure.
If they jump the fence or whatever, I don't need that headache. And and the one I really wanted to shoot, there was some cattle way, way back. I mean, they were like, I wouldn't, there's no way I would have had to worry about it. But on TV, if someone sees the image of you shooting a deer and there's cattle even way in the background, you're going to get a lot of hate mail. Sure. So I passed. But unless my schedule is interrupted by some like Montana sheep tag or something, I think I'm going to be eating turkey dinner in Northeast Wyoming this year. Or maybe that turkey dinner will turn out to be tenderloins.
There you go.
Of Wyoming whitetail. But to the listeners, if you are a whitetail junkie and you live in the Midwest or you live in the West, why you guys aren't in Wyoming hunting whitetails in November when a lot of their seasons are already closed? No, not all of them, but in the upper Midwest, a lot of those seasons close in early November. But if you don't want to, that's fine. That's more leftovers for me. So.
No pressure.
But so I think we got about another 30 or 40 minutes on the podcast here, and Buzz has been looking at me like, I don't know if we want to talk about this. Yeah, I want to talk about this. No, I don't. Jeff, they're looking at each other like, So I'm just going to leave it to you guys to say whether or not you want to talk about this next topic. We have a vote here. The Wyoming Sportsman's Alliance operates on unanimous consent. So,
right.
There's 2 of you here. Yeah. You both have to agree we're going to talk about it, or we're not going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
All right. Okay. So
we should probably mention how it all got started.
Yeah. You guys give the history of this, because just by accident, I was asked to be part of it.
Uh-huh.
I think it was 3 years ago. I was telling you guys.
Yep.
Because when you brought it up, I'm like, I wasn't told all that. It was so. Fortunately, I said, this doesn't quite fit my gig, and I said, thanks for thinking of me, but I got other places I'll go,
Right,
and other things I'll do.
right.
So, anyhow, I'll open it up to you guys, however you want to talk about it.
You know, we missed a couple of the interim meetings last year, and so
Interim of the legislature?
The legislature, yeah, the Travel, Rec, and Wildlife Committee. And
travel, recreation, and wildlife.
Right.
And that's where most of your fish and game bills
all
come
of them,
through?
pretty much. Unless it's some kind of a budget thing, it might end up in the finance or something. But what we missed was apparently there's been a woman's group that has been putting on some great antelope hunts for first-time women hunters. Mm-hmm. And which is a great thing. They're getting these gals out in the field. They're doing an antelope hunt. Just finding out about hunting in the outdoors. Just a great thing. Mm-hmm. Well, apparently there's been some issues in these areas that they're hunting, which were 100% draw, of some women getting involved in the hunt after the deadline. So they weren't able to get a license.
Okay, so say you're so-and-so hunter, you got invited, and you say, maybe I can't make it. The deadline passes, and you call and say, hey, guess what? I can make it.
Right.
But it's too late because they didn't put into the draw. Okay.
So there have been, since about 1979, 80 antelope licenses allocated for the one-shot lander hunt. You read about it a lot. It's called the Wyoming one-shot antelope hunt. Right.
And it's based out of Lander.
Okay. Lander. And the gals went to the legislature, and they looked at the present statute, which set aside up to 80 licenses at the discretion of the commission, the Game and Fish Commission, mm-hmm. for the one-shot hunt. And they said, well, we would like to have some licenses. So one of our legislators, without really doing a whole lot of thinking about it, decided, well, I'm going to put a bill out, and I'm going to reserve 80 licenses for these gals, because it just so happens the Lander one-shot hunt is for men only.
Hold on. Wyoming was the state that brought us the right to women to vote, but your one-shot antelope hunt excludes women.
That's correct.
So a woman couldn't participate if they wanted?
Nope, not in the competition. They're not allowed. They're not allowed.
Listeners are going to hit the rewind button to make sure they heard what you said there, Jeff.
I hope they do, because, I'm a father of 3 daughters, and they all hunt.
Yeah.
I don't have any boys. I have grandsons now they're hunting, but I got daughters that hunt, and this offends me all to heck.
Yeah. I had no idea. So how long has the Lander one been going on?
Since it started, a couple of guys thought of this idea back in the late 30s.
Okay.
It took a couple of years off during the war.
Yeah. And
then it's kind of built some steam since then, kind of a competition between mainly Colorado and Wyoming, but Montana's governor has been involved in the past, that type of thing.
Okay.
It's had a lot of dignitaries, celebrities, and so forth. So when this bill came out, I noticed that there was up to 80 licenses, and I thought, there's no way they're using 80 licenses to conduct this one-shot hunt.
Yeah.
So I looked up their rules, and sure enough, there's 8 3-man teams, so that's 24 tags.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, the perfect solution to this is allow them to use their reserve up to 40 for them and up to 40 for the gals.
Yeah. Is this when the worms crawl out of the can?
So I made a couple phone calls. I know a lot of guys in the department. They're all good guys, and started talking to them about it. And most of them didn't really know much about the Lander one-shot, but they finally got me to the guy who did. Uh-huh. And I said, so what's the problem about splitting this 80 and gals and the guys? And well, the Lander guys use all 80.
Hold on, you said they use 24.
Yeah, the one-shot competition uses 24. But then if you have been in that competition, you can join a club called the Past Shooters Club.
Past shooters. Like someone who participated in the past but might not be in the current.
And you are first in line to get one of those 56 leftover licenses the next year.
Hold on. Let me back up there. So 3 or 4 years, I can't remember how long ago it was when I was approached of, hey, you could bring some profile to our event and da-da-da. I could have been a past shooter.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have to draw a Wyoming antelope tag, you're telling me. You
would have been guaranteed a tag the next year.
That still doesn't equate in my mind. Because I was told, and maybe this is what the money's used for, that they raise money for water projects and conservation projects and stuff like that, which sounded to me like a great cause.
Sure.
So at first I was like, yeah. And then because it seemed kind of like a private club, I'm like, I don't know that really works for my message.
Right, but, and I think that was a good choice to make in that. And what they fund is it's this thing called Water for Wildlife, the Water for Wildlife Foundation.
Water for Wildlife, yeah.
And what they do is they fund different water, like, you know, what do they call them? Like guzzlers and things like this, and develop water.
Yeah.
And it sounded like a pretty good deal even to me at first. I'm like, well, you know, at least but then I got to digging into it, and out of the 435 water projects that they've done with this money that they're raising with our antelope licenses, they've only conducted like 179 of those have been done in Wyoming. The rest of the projects have been done in Oklahoma, Texas, Oregon, Colorado, all over the place. And that, you know, I get that, but I guess I feel like if Texas wants to do a water project, then maybe they ought to go have a pig hunt or go whatever they want to do. I would rather it not be at the expense of my wildlife and in Wyoming. I think if it's a Wyoming-based thing, then all the money should stay in Wyoming.
Right.
And
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I have a big problem with that, actually. So that was kind of one of the things that sort of, I'm shaking my head going, oh boy, this is getting worse by the minute.
So they raise money. From what I gather, they raise some money from this shoot. It goes. You said that money. Then it doesn't go to a 501c3. It goes to some foundation, or
it actually goes to the one-shot antelope hunt, and then I believe they have a foundation set up within the one-shot hunt.
Okay, gotcha.
With this Water for Wildlife.
Okay,
and that's how they do it, and it's pretty lucrative. They say that their average water project is about $5,000. So you do 5,000 times almost 500. That's quite a bit of money.
Right, that's 2.5
million.
Yeah,
right.
That they've since. When did you say it started, Jeff? In the late 30s? Probably got going after the war.
The legislature appropriated the tags in 1979. So we really don't have the exact dates on when all this.
Sure.
You know, and how it began as far as these extra tags and the Game and Fish allowing them to pick them up and give them out like they're doing. I mean,
so tell me, what do you mean by that? You say allow Game and Fish to pick them up, or Game and Fish allows them to pick them up and just give them out like that. What does that mean?
Well, what it means is the appropriation by the legislature was for up to 80 tags.
Right.
The commission may issue those tags. They don't have to.
Right.
So at some point in time, the Lander One-Shot group had to come up with this idea to allow past shooters to get licenses in following years after they participated in the hunt, which, you know, really doesn't make any sense, because the Game and Fish is actually allowing the One-Shot Club to give them a list of names and say, okay, we want these guys to have these tags. That's the only appropriation in the state of Wyoming that's done by a private organization for licenses.
So if I was on that pass list, I'm starting to think I was stupid to pass this up, because, dang, much as I love to hunt pronghorn, I wouldn't have to stand in line with everybody.
No,
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and these are trophy areas too.
So even if I wasn't one of the 24, I'm like, I'm busy this year, I can't come down for the fundraiser. But hey, I'm on the list of past folks. I could put my name in a hat for those other 56 tags.
Yeah,
that is correct.
And how do they allocate those other 56 tags?
It's a set of rules that
is a set of rules governed by state law?
No, governed by the one-shot hunt.
By the club. Okay.
Yeah, so they basically set their own rules on how they allocate the 56 tags to the pass shooters.
Oh, okay.
And there's also a thing in there where if a pass shooter wants to decline his license, he can basically give his license to a guest.
Ooh, I need to get some friends.
Yes.
Pass shooters. I'm
Exactly.
going to put out on my website, hey, if you are a pass shooter of the one-shot club and you aren't going this year, let me know.
Right. Yeah, and so we just started adding all this stuff up, and we're like, this is just not a good deal at all.
Oh.
And so we are going to engage in this issue and see what we can do to maybe make some corrections to it.
And this is going to be a tough deal because I'm sure the one-shot organization is bringing some money to the community of Lander with this hunt.
Yeah.
However, I mean, there's certain things that just aren't quite acceptable about this, and the woman issue is one of them.
Yeah.
And just to let you know, if you're in the one-shot hunt as one of the competitors, and
one of the guys,
one of the guys, and you miss your shot, well, you're considered a loser. So the losers get to dress up like Indian women.
Hold on. What?
Yeah.
And they do a round dance with the Indian maidens or something along those lines. I'm not sure what it is. So I think this really sends a bad message. And
I need to hit the repeat button on that, Jeff. Would you say that? So
if you're one of the losers, you dress up like a woman. Yes.
That's part of the rule?
Well,
it's part of the
bylaws
in quotes tradition, I guess. The tradition of it is, you're...
oh, that's making my head hurt.
Oh, I know. And here's the
I'm going to have to... Do you know what a shitstorm... Oh my God! Can we delete this part of the podcast? My emails are gonna go to hell after this. But so you are saying I'm one of the 24 guys because my wife wouldn't be allowed, or my daughter, or whoever. So I'm a guy. So I meet the criteria.
Mm-hmm.
I go and I get my one shot and I miss.
Mm-hmm.
When the whole club, or however it works, I don't know.
They have their ceremonies after the hunt.
I missed, and they say, Newberg, you missed. You have to dress up like a Native American woman, and we're going to take pictures of you.
Yeah. Punish you for missing your one shot. That's your punishment.
But
there's got to be some...
The winning team does get to dance with the Braves, though.
Jeff, come on. I don't even know what to say to this. Was that a joke?
No, that wasn't a joke.
That's not a joke. That's not a joke.
So the winning team, how do you win?
Like, say, your team members...
is a team of three?
Team of three. All three had one-shot kills, and no one else had 3 one-shot kills, you would be determined the winner.
Okay.
So that
the three of you then are celebrated up and down the streets of Lander.
Well, I'm not sure if they do that.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not the streets of Lander,
I
but
think
definitely.
they have a place where they do their celebration or whatever you want to call it, and but
you should maybe also mention something.
Now there is a consolation to all this, and that's that while the men are out hunting, the wives get to go on shopping sprees and luncheons, and they have little events planned for the women while the men are out in the field.
This is not going to be allowed on my podcast. I'm not. I think this is like the 60th podcast I've been on, between mine and as a guest as others. And there's never been a topic revealed that has my jaw on the floor like you guys have just told me. So let me recap this. I don't doubt you guys. Okay, I've known you guys long enough that I believe whatever you say. But what you guys are telling me, the Wyoming statute gives 80 tags to this event.
Yep.
They have 24 hunters spread among 8 teams that are men only.
Right.
No women. If a woman came and said, I want to come and I'm going to be here, they say no, or they can. Historically, they always have.
Right.
Okay.
The one-shot group chooses the teams.
Okay. And then there's 56 other tags that I'm still like, how are those tags getting out? And so I'm just picking up bits and pieces.
Apparently, what the one-shot is claiming, through what I've been told by the Game and Fish, is that the 56 other hunters are part of their event.
Okay. So they're part of the event. They're not in the contest.
Correct.
But they come down and they hunt.
Right.
And they can do this every year.
Right.
And they could come down a week in advance and scout for big trophy bucks in these areas where's Lander? Is that in Fremont County?
We're talking some major trophy.
You don't have to search Boone and Crockett trophy search very long to realize that Fremont County has a lot of entries. Yep. So they can come down, scout, and they could, if you're one of those 56, you could shoot 10 times or one time or in between or whatever.
Yep.
But you don't have to stand in line with Randy and Buzz and Jeff.
No.
And we were told that some of these units that they're hunting in have, some of them less than 2% non-resident draw odds.
But if I would have been... I'm still going back to that. I wish I would have been caught in a moment of weakness there when that was presented to me. I didn't give it much thought because, I mean, I'd listened to like a 10-minute pitch and said, nah, just not my gig. But so those 56 tags, the club determines how they're going to allocate them.
Right, that's right.
So what's going to come of, okay, you guys have suggested, hey, let's cut those tags. Let's take 40 out of that pool of 56 and give that to a women's shoot.
Right.
So are you going to demand bylaws that if the woman misses, that she's got to go hang out with the Native American guys? I mean, that part of it, I'm like...
First of all, I want to say that since the bill didn't pass for the additional 80 because of some controversy came up.
Yeah. Okay.
And people started talking a little bit about the one-shot. So the bill died, and they're going to talk about this in the interim. So Buzz called the gal at the Women's Foundation, and they seem to be getting all their ducks in a row. They're going to get all their women applied for these 100% draw areas, so they can fulfill all the tags. So
these areas, the women are doing it, are not the trophy units.
They're not right.
This is someplace where they know they're going to get their tags.
Right, and they have
leftover tags. There's whatever.
Right, and then from BHA's standpoint, this was a really tough one for us because when you have a group of men only that are getting these tags, I'm not going to ever take a position to not encourage women to be involved in hunting.
Right.
So we couldn't really go out and do that. So what I explained to him was, though, that this is really setting a horrible precedent by having all these complimentary licenses. They completely understood. They were awesome to work with.
The women's group.
The women's group. Yeah, they were absolutely wonderful to work with. It was great. And one of the things I promised them is I said, no matter what happens with this legislation, number one, if it passes, there's going to be no hard feelings with BHA at all. It is what it is. Yeah. And if it doesn't pass, I will make you a promise that we will help you in any way we can to make sure that you have your licenses available for your hunt. Yeah. And they could not thank me enough, and I did. I followed up as soon as their bill, didn't make it through the legislature. I contacted them and said, "Hey, here's some things that I think you can do to help you make sure that you get your licenses every year." And it's been a great working relationship with them.
Okay.
And our goal is with this that. It's just hard when you're Wyoming, the equality state, and you're not allowing women to participate in that hunt.
Something that a state resource is being handed over to a club, for lack of a better term.
Right. You know, and I want to mention this. In my family, I had two brothers and a sister. Mm-hmm. I was the only one that stayed in Wyoming. I loved to hunt. Yeah. None of my siblings hunt. Yeah. So they moved. They're carrying on their lives in other states, doing other things, but I stayed in Wyoming. When I started raising my children, they were brought up in the outdoors, and I knew with gals, tread lightly, be careful, but get them involved. And so I started my kids as soon as they could. My 3 daughters were all taken out into the field, all got to hunt. And Randy, they live in Casper. They stayed in Wyoming. They're adults now. They have their families in Wyoming. So I truly believe the outdoors is what has kept my family together and in Wyoming. Yeah. It means a great deal to me.
Right. I can see, Jeff, when you talk about this, the fact that women are excluded, that didn't you talked about Buzz having a blood pressure spike at some event. And I know you guys are so involved in conservation that it's not that you want to do anything that hurts conservation.
Absolutely
but you also
not.
want to make sure that, you know, crazy things it's not funny. I'm just my chuckle is out of being dumbfounded that in today's world it's been however long before this surfaced.
It's unbelievable, actually.
It's not just us that were kind of blindsided by this either. I mean, everybody we talked to in Wyoming, they're like, oh yeah, we kind of. And then there was also seems kind of a strange thing that there were some people that knew about it, but they really didn't know how to go about trying to make it change. And I think we're going to be the catalyst for some change to happen, because I'm not afraid to,
And we're not trying to say the one-shot hunt needs to stop.
No,
right.
We're not trying to say that. If they want to carry on their tradition, it's time for a rule change.
Right.
Plain and simple.
Yeah.
And they've done rule changes along the way. They've changed the number of the team members. At what used to be 5, now it's 3. They can do what they want and carry on their one-shot tradition. Yeah. But it can't carry on in this way.
Yeah. No, I'm just excluding women, forcing, quote unquote, the losing team to, as if hanging out with Native American women is some disgraceful thing. I mean, I grew up next to a reservation, so I have a lot of Native friends. And so I'm probably as sympathetic to their causes as I can be, just because I saw how their lives are and what challenges they face. So to say that for me is like, you are effing kidding me.
Right.
Yeah, it's offensive on a lot of levels. It really is, and it's really, really hard, even right now, for me to really contain some of the things that I really want to say.
No, I get it. So this podcast is going to air in probably mid-May. Will you guys have had that meeting?
Yes.
By the time this airs?
Well, we're going to have a meeting we'll be at the TRW meeting.
Okay. So
yeah,
I
TRW.
guess if anyone wants to sweep it under the rug and act like it didn't happen, you can say, well, there's going to be 100,000 people who download a podcast. That's a pretty big rug you're trying to sweep there.
They better have a big rug.
Yeah.
When we've already met with, we've met with the Game and Fish about it, so they know, everyone kind of knows it's coming. We've reached out to the one-shot hunt. We've not heard back from them yet. Yeah. But we will by then for sure. And like Jeff says, it's not like we're trying to, rain on their parade. It's just the parade is just not adequate right now.
No. And I'm all about special events for raising money for conservation. I do struggle, though, anytime we feel like we have to let some people step to the front of the line as that's somehow our mechanism for conservation.
Oh, you're so right.
We look at some states where it's almost, it's the model that they've adopted because they don't want to make the hard decisions of fee increases or whatever it would take to get funding through a broader base. And so when it becomes, because I'm so-and-so, and I've been, there's other states that do this in the whitetail world, and I've been approached do you want one of these? They have them promotional tags, or they have a name for it. I'm like, no, that's going to be pretty hard on my psyche, and just it's not what I'm about, and it's what I've never been about, and So, hey, it'll be interesting to see how you guys sort that out in Wyoming. I think in today's world, as much as we're always trying to find conservation funding, there's always going to be the siren song over there, kind of, hey, here's these tags. We can raise some money with this. And I get where, and let's face it, there's always controversy over auction tags.
There is. I made a comment at a meeting. I can't remember what it was here just in the last month or so. Between Jeff and I, we attend a million meetings, but they were making some comment about conservation tags. And, well, maybe we could. I'm like, what, you want to be Utah? And I mean, the whole room just busted out laughing, Right. And it's become that bad. It's that big of a joke. And it's true. You look at like the list of licenses that Utah now has that are either sold through raffle or auction. It's mind-numbing.
It's crazy. I mean, in Montana, we do one auction tag, and then the state sponsors this super tag system, and it's for all of our big game species. The super tag, I think, is $5 for you're buying a raffle ticket in effect, and there's a high level of transparency to it. Here, the money goes into this designated account, and this is what it's supposed to be used for. Whereas all of a sudden, this almost becomes like, as I've watched it in other states, this auction tag, buy your way to the front of the line thing, has created cottage industries almost. And it never, I'm thankful that in Montana we've kept it at one raffle tag, one auction tag for each species. But there's always the idea floated around. Like Idaho this year in their legislative session, they wanted to adopt more of the Utah model, and I think it got killed.
It did get killed.
So far, it has anyhow.
Yeah.
And point being is, it's hard to explain or look the average hunter in the eye and say, you know what, the North American model about equal opportunity, some sort of democratic allocation of opportunity, is what the North American model is based on. But, we're going to make exceptions for these few hundred guys who can write a check for blah, 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 whatever. And don't get me wrong. I am all about people being as successful as they can. I mean, my job, my life as a CPA is helping people make money.
Correct.
I love successful people. That's America. But that doesn't mean that the guy with the biggest checkbook should be able to go to the front of the line every year after year, for multiple species in multiple states. And I get every state's going to decide how they want to do it. Right. I just question, is this undermining the confidence hunters have in state agencies, in the North American model, how we fund wildlife? I don't know if the dollars are supposedly there that come from these tags, but is it worth what it's costing us in trust and confidence and everything else?
Yeah, and I know one thing I've put out on your board a couple of times, and I'm sure people get tired of me hearing it, but everybody thinks that like these conservation, these special tags is like saving the world, and they're the greatest thing, and look at all the money they spend, but what people don't look at is like the overall game and fish budgets.
Right.
Like in Wyoming, it's a $78 million a year budget. These tags maybe bring in, which our governor's tag program is really kind of similar to yours, a limited number, and I know right where all the money goes, and it goes to a good cause. But in the overall scheme of the budget, it's still the average rank and file hunter every year they've been paying for this forever. I look at people like my grandfather, my father that have, throughout the years, they have really created what we're all fighting about now.
Right.
And they did it with just the money that you gave, that you pay for your license fees. I think that's pretty remarkable. And it's ours. We have it. It's ours to continue this, or we can, choose to throw it away and just allow the rich to do it. And I just don't, I'm with you, Randy. I'm not in favor of the way that happens.
Yeah. And each state's going to make up their own mind of how they do it. And I personally, I have no problem with a state that might have 2, 3, 4 of these in total. And as long as they have the same number of raffle tags so that the average person, but when the money comes in, I want to know that it's being used for what they say it's being used for. There's the continued discussion in Utah because they have such a bounty of tag, there's questions about the transparency of, well, what was the money used for? Well, pretty soon you got such a big pool of tags and such a gob of money floating around, no one can keep track of anything.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of mutiny on that bounty in Utah.
Oh, that's a whole nother podcast, Buzz. There's a reason that Randy's not been invited down to Utah for a podcast. One of their people challenged me to a debate in 2011 or 12, it was, I think, and then he backed out.
Got a little cold feet, did he?
He did. When he found out, hey, it was interesting. You know, there's that Monster Muleys website. Hey, Brian, no charge for that plug. Brian, who owns Monster Muleys, is a good guy. But he went out and he had no idea how engaged and involved I've been in the wolf issue since forever. And he'd been blowing smoke about how him and his group had saved us from the big bad wolf. And they were the ones trying to kill the bill that Mike Simpson, a Republican congressman from Idaho, and John Tester, a Democratic senator from Montana. They got a bill added to the budget bill in 2011. They got a rider attached to it. And these two Utah groups were trying to kill it. And I remember I sent you and Terry and a few others the email, Buzz. I said, my friend in D.C. just sent me this. Watch your news feed tomorrow. And one of you guys wrote me back and said, are you serious? I'm like, watch. And so that's when the whole thing blew up. And so this guy challenged me to a debate out on Monster Muleys. I didn't even know. Some guy sent me an email saying, hey, Randy, the founder wants to debate you. Well, okay, so I signed on to Monster Muleys. You say when, where, I'll be there. I'll even pay for the moderator.
Right.
And then when he found out how engaged I was in the wolf deal, he had an attorney who was putting together this whole debate. An attorney that he'd trusted said, well, I want you to manage and coordinate. Okay. So we're on these calls, and all of a sudden he has this list of topics we can't talk about. We can't talk about wolves all of a sudden.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's like, well, wolves are off the table. I'm like, what do you mean? You're the one claiming credit for all this. You don't. Well, no, that's just going to be too distracting. Well, he had so many things that taken off the table. Pretty soon we didn't have anything to talk about. And anyhow, that's a tangent from the whole Utah thing. But
he spurred some legislation in Wyoming.
Yeah.
Over selling GPS coordinates for animals.
Yeah, I saw that this year.
And they're still talking about it. They want to come up with something and prevent it from happening.
Yeah. In the interim, they want to talk about these licensed services or whatever you want to call it, not licensed services, but scouting services and stuff, and what they can and can't do.
Yeah, headhunters is what a lot of people call them. I mean, I've seen guys post out on the hunting forums, hey, I am keeping track of this big bull in this unit. I'll tell you where he is for $5,000 or $1,000 or whatever. It's like, really? That's what we've come to in this hunting world. Oh. But for some of you who are listening who maybe don't live in the West, we got some crazy things that go on out here. They're probably like, what in the hell are these guys talking about?
Never a dull moment.
No, but that tangent got me thinking about Utah having this completely different wildlife model for funding their agency. Yeah, they sell licenses and tags and such, but when an agency becomes dependent upon this process of letting guys buy their way to the front of the line, I don't think that's healthy for the agency either.
No.
Who are they accountable to? Are they accountable to the wildlife? Or are they accountable to the guys who are writing the checks that help ease some of their budgetary pain?
Correct.
And we have to be real careful in Wyoming. We're on the brink. I mean, if we start legislating more set-aside tags for private organizations, when does it stop?
Right. That's the question, Jeff. And I think the other thing resident hunters need to start thinking about every time, at least my experience has been, every time a resident fee increase comes up, there's the guy who has the $40,000 pickup with $12,000 of ATVs in the back and just bought a $5,000 long-range rifle shows up and bitches about a $10 increase.
That's never ceased to amaze me, ever. And it's been going on in every state I hunt in.
Yeah.
You know.
But my point of caution there is, if we as residents don't agree to some sort of annual or incremental increase to what it costs to run the agency, when the agency gets starved, pretty soon they have no choice, but they start listening to these ideas of, oh, well, if you'd let some of our dudes buy their way to the front of the line, we could get you an extra $400,000, or we could this, or we could that. And our continual protests about fee increases, I think, expose us to that risk even greater than it has been in the past.
And that is what I really don't like about the fee increases typically. Like in Wyoming, we tried to run a bill with just a resident fee only increase, died. We tried to one that did both, it died. We tried, and I get it with the non-residents. I really do. There reaches a point where is it worth coming to Wyoming to shoot a $600 pronghorn? Yeah. I mean, there's an upper limit to what people are going to spend, and I think we're getting very, very close to that line right now.
Yeah, $4,400
for a bison.
Right.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah, I saw that. Holy cow.
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, but and that's the other worry I have. I'm a non-resident in a lot of states. I'm only a resident in one state, and I apply. We did the math the other day between me and guest hunters and my family members. We make over 120 tag applications in a year.
Wow.
And in only one state is that as a resident. So I'm fully aware of what non-resident fees are and the rules and the tag allocations. But I don't know, and I'm getting to your point, Buzz, of where is that upper limit? Everyone's going to say that upper limit's in a different spot. For me, that upper limit isn't how I measure it for me individually, because I have with hunting being such a priority for me, that upper limit is going to be higher than it is for other people. But I want non-residents to come to my state of Montana and enjoy what we have to offer, because when I get on the phone and say, hey, Congress is trying to sell your public lands, I don't want the dude in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania to say, you know what, Randy, I'm pretty busy today because you guys lay the pipe to me every chance you get.
Right.
Why don't you guys take care of that problem yourself? And people listening to this might say, oh, the folks don't say that. I'm here to tell you, as someone who's making a lot of those requests and calls to action of people who don't live in the West and say, hey, we need your help to keep these public lands public, I'm getting a lot of pushback of, oh, really? You need me now, and you need me when I can write a check for you, but when you want me to come and actually hunt there, you guys don't have any use for me. We can't have our cake and eat it too.
No, in fact, one of the bills that we fought the last two sessions was the 60-40 between the special and regular fees.
Right, and what Buzz is talking about in Wyoming, the non-resident pool gets split. 40% goes into this really high dollar special pool, and the other 60% go into the lower regular price, they call it.
Correct.
Elk, deer, and antelope.
Elk, deer, and antelope. Right. And the thing that really a lot of people don't realize is that you cannot apply, if a youth hunter gets a pretty big break in Wyoming, if you're in the regular draw. But in the special, you have to pay the adult fees, the same as everybody else.
As a youth.
As a youth, and the Wyoming Outfitters and Guides Association has run a bill 2 consecutive sessions to try to flop those around so it's 60% special, 40% regular. And that's where I drew the personal line for me and BHA is like, no, we need to have this be something that the regular person and the average person can afford.
Right.
And on top of that, we want to be able to involve youth. And Wyoming does a great thing by allowing those, cheaper youth fees.
Non-resident youth fees.
And we have killed that bill 2 years in a row.
Right.
And I can guarantee you they're going to run out of wanting to run that bill because it's going to get killed by us every single time they want to run it. And at least we're going to fight it as hard as we can.
Why should we disenfranchise non-resident youth? We need them.
Right.
We need them to come to our state to hunt.
Future non-resident hunters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When that came up, Buzz, I apply in the special draw because I need tags.
Right.
So I go wherever the better draw odds are. But I sent in commentary, my comments, to that committee in the legislature and said, this would benefit me, but I think it's a dumb idea. Leave it as it is. We don't need more rich guys, if that's the term that would be hung on me. I'm not rich, but we don't need more people. We've already given those willing to pay more enough leverage. We don't need to give them 60% of the tags instead of 40. And so I said that in my email. Well, I can assure you that your state legislature has a level of confidentiality right up there with, I'm trying to think who would be a good comparison. Let's just say they don't have any confidentiality, because my email got distributed to a lot of the power brokers in Wyoming wildlife politics. And I became a public target. And your Wyoming Outfitter and Guide Association came after me. Some individuals came after me because I said, you know what? I don't think we need more leverage to the non-resident who can write the big check. You already carved away 40% of the tags to us. We don't need 60%. Well,
isn't that curious that, the guy that's wanting to stick up for all non-resident hunters, sends his comments in, is raked over the coals by another. That just doesn't even make any sense to me. And I say, if you want to rake me over the coals for that, bring it, because,
That's what I did. I'm like, really? You guys, I'll show you. I posted some of those emails out on Hunt Talk. And as far as I'm concerned, they can kiss my ass.
I agree with you.
That kind of stuff. And for legislators to share emails from constituents or from people to other groups that they know will use that leverage because of the position I hold in certain nonprofit groups, because of the position I have with sponsors, that's just bullshit.
It is.
But I've become accustomed. I wish I could say that's the only time it ever happened. I know some people were all upset about it. I'm like, you know what? It just comes with the territory I operate in and the big mouth I have. And
it's kind of interesting the low level that some people will stoop. Me with my regular day job.
Right.
I've heard about some things that I've done, in my volunteer stuff, and they're trying to burn me down. And it's like, that's just so low budget. If you want to come talk to me about it, I'm always here, and they choose the low, they just take the low road every chance they get. It's lame.
It is, but you know what? We all sleep well at night because we're trying our damnedest. I can't say I'm always right. I mean, I stick my neck out there at times and I get it chopped off and I'm like, Randy, what the hell were you thinking? You should have thought that through better. I mean, I'm not going to say I got all the answers or that my position's always right, but I try, and I'm not afraid to stick my neck out there.
No, and I think that's a huge key right there to the whole thing, is being willing to just do the right thing.
Yeah, and to all our listeners, I think about conservation in America is a volunteer organization. It's the biggest volunteer organization I know of. I think of how many hours, millions and millions of hours a year get invested by volunteers that keep our conservation model in place. And all these people listening, some of them are just like you guys. I bet you if you guys added up the hours you spend as volunteers, and I'm not going to put you on the spot to even estimate, but and same for me, but I'm at the point in my life where I can do it.
Right.
And I'm actually glad that I'm in a position I can do it.
No, absolutely. I don't regret 1 minute of it, and I'm going to keep doing it. And I have grandkids that are coming up, and I want it there for them.
Yeah.
And it's important. If somebody's not there fighting for it, we're going to lose it someday.
Oh, yeah.
It scares me. I mean, all these crazy bills in the legislature, we if we're not there to fight it, it's just going to go through, and that's going to be the end of it. And those days are over, though, because guys like Buzz and I, there's more of us. The outfitters can't just waltz into Cheyenne and get whatever they want anymore.
Right. Well, I look at this room, the number of people who are going to be at this gathering, this rendezvous this weekend. There's not any of them that I talk to who aren't advocates and activists for the cause of hunting and conservation in their community. Every one of them are. And when I come here, I leave, I got a smile like a ripple on a slop pail, man. I'm like, look at this, man. These are badass hunters who don't give a shit what the politicians think.
Oh, that's it. You just leave here feeling good about what you've done all year,
Yeah, I would say this crowd here has, every one of them have pretty much thrown away their give a shit meter. But what I mean by that is they don't care if the heat's coming.
No.
They'll take the heat.
Look at this. Buzz and I just spilled our guts about the Lander one shot.
Right.
So, there could be some major heat coming over that. But
there will be.
Let me tell you something.
Unfortunately. But that's why when I can use my platforms to let you guys lay your argument out first, or not just you guys, but others.
Sure.
That's what my platforms are for. Because if it was just you guys trying to argue with someone else, yeah, you guys would still handle your own. I'm not worried about that. But this, hopefully, being able to explain it to bigger audiences helps in some way.
It does, Randy. And like I said at the start, is what you've done is outstanding. And I talk about humbling. I see all the stuff you've done and the platform you provide. That's what gives me inspiration to keep doing it. So,
well, I appreciate you saying that.
No, I second that. And I just met you the other day, and I've seen you on TV. I've seen what you write on the forums and stuff. You're truly just a regular guy that cares. I really mean that, and I appreciate what you do too. I
appreciate that you guys would say that. And Jeff, we swap emails and everything, but yeah, we just actually met the other day, and I feel like I've known you forever because I'm asking you for advice on this, and I'm chiming in on your Facebook posts and stuff. But
it's amazing we haven't met because we hunt the same area, before. And I've made some great friends of non-resident hunters coming there elk hunting. Ty Stubblefield's one of them.
Yeah.
Some people out in Oregon. I mean, we're lifelong friends now.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. Hunters meet in the field, and you see the determination that people go through to hunt, the love they have to do it.
Yeah.
And it just takes you back. And I like that guy, he's like me.
No, I know exactly what you're saying. It's like, hey, there's someone who looks at the world the same way I look at the world. Because the rest of the time I'm walking through the United States, I'm like, man, everyone thinks I'm kind of a wingnut. And I probably am, but when I find some fellow wingnuts who are out there hunting, I'm like, hey, pull up a chair, sit around our camp for a while. But, well, guys, we've kept them a long time here, and I can't thank you guys for all you do in Wyoming, then you guys, with this group that's a national group, Backcountry Hunters, and the inspiration the example you guys are providing for how a small handful of people can make a huge difference in their state. I hope that people go out. Does your Wyoming Sportsman's Alliance have an official page or anything? Or
they do. They have, I think, Jeff, you'd know more, but they have a Facebook page.
There's a Facebook page and an internet page.
Okay, what's the Facebook page? Wyoming Sportsman's Alliance?
Wyoming Sportsman's Alliance.
Okay, on Facebook.
Facebook.
And then the email or the website is?
I believe if you just Google Wyoming Sportsman's Alliance, it pops right up.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I guess we're going to have to cut it short, guys, because they're about ready to come and throw us out of this room here. But Jeff, Buzz, thanks for all you guys do. Audience, thanks for listening. Until the next time. Oh, remember, deer and antelope deadline for Wyoming is May 31st, right?
That's correct.
Do not forget to apply. Just don't apply where I'm applying. Thanks for listening. 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 Thanks for listening.